Today I want to talk about anxiety. Now, this may sound a little controversial, but I don't think anxiety is an illness. I don't think it's a disease. In my experience, it seems much more likely to be a learned behaviour. We all remember when anxiety first kicked off. Maybe you were on a train, maybe you were flying, maybe you're in a hospital or a crowded event like a festival or a football match. Maybe it was more than anxiety, maybe it was just that overwhelming sense of panic, and all you could do was try and escape the situation as quickly as possible. Perhaps it evolved into an anxiety disorder. Perhaps you have generalized anxiety disorder. Perhaps you've got social anxiety, OCD, any number of these anxiety disorders which can form after so-called traumatic events. But I'm in a pretty good position to talk about anxiety and what I learned about it and how I helped recover from it, because I used to have anxiety. I used to wake up feeling overwhelmed all day, every day, and I used to have OCD, non-stop intrusive thoughts which were just completely overwhelming my life and making me miserable. Now, what I learned was very different to what society was saying. I actually find it strange how society and the mainstream medical industry treats anxiety. It often treats it like an illness rather than just being a normal human emotion. We all get anxious, we all get nervous, that's just part of the human plight. But when we get anxious too often, too overwhelmed, it can evolve into a disorder. But it doesn't seem that you're broken. But the issue is that if it's just a normal emotion, there would be a lot bigger resistance to medicating our emotions. Whereas if a doctor tells you you're broken, the wire in your brain is wrong, you've got this illness, you've got this disease, it's not your fault, then they can say, you need this medication to help fix you. Now, mental illnesses are actually voted into existence. A group of doctors sit around a table, discuss the symptoms, classify them all together, and then call it something. And then they will put this into a medical manual called the DSM, and then this new medical condition exists. So that's the mainstream model. You're broken, you need fixing by medication. Now, don't get me wrong, medication can be helpful. If you're absolutely overwhelmed, there's nothing wrong with getting a bit of help to try and just ease some of that pressure that you're feeling on yourself and just to lessen the absolute overwhelm. I know how tough it can be. But here's what I believe causes anxiety, and this is through my own experience and my own recovery. I no longer have anxiety, I no longer have OCD, so I feel in a pretty good place to be able to talk about this. One of the most pressing issues for people with anxiety is that they look at the world in such a negative way. They look back over the past and they think all of the things they regret, the missed opportunities, the things they did wrong. They ruminate on conversations, and if they did something wrong, they feel guilty and they feel shame, and it's just an endless cycle of beating themselves up. Or perhaps they look to the future and it's just an endless cycle of what if stories. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? And there's no end to it because they try and think of all the solutions, but then the mind just traps them in more what if thinking. There's always a doubt in the mind. And that is one of the biggest issues of anxiety. Expecting the worst outcome and living in the future. If you can live in the now, anxiety can't exist because there's nothing to be anxious about right now. It's always future projection on what may happen in the future. Now, it's not a surprise that people feel these ways. You just turn on the news and you can see exactly the way society wants to program us. They want to program us with as much negativity as we are willing to accept. There are few things worse for you than watching the news if you want to recover from a mental health issue. It shows the people that are watching it that the world is a dangerous place and that you should be scared of everything. The other cause of anxiety, the real underlying cause, is resisting or avoiding your emotions. Emotions are just emotions. People call them emotions nowadays. So it actually stands for energy in motion. What that means is, in a healthy person who's well adjusted and understands their emotions, the energy rises up within them. They sit there, they feel that emotion. Perhaps they're shaking, perhaps they're crying, perhaps they're overheating. They release the energy, and then eventually it calms back down. But the anxious person resists it because they don't want to feel their emotions. So instead of releasing it and feeling better, they try and store it by protecting themselves, by trying not to feel anxious. Whereas in fact, it's actually the feeling of anxiety which is releasing all that emotional pressure and makes the person feel better. How many times have you heard that someone felt much better after they had a good cry? It's the same with anxiety. Anxiety can come up within you, be released, and then eventually you calm back down. It always passes. So that's why it's, in my experience, not a disease. It sounds very simple, and crazily enough, it is simple. It's the basis of ERP, exposure and response prevention. You just keep exposing yourself to the things that make you fearful. You keep bringing up this emotional energy, then eventually it passes and you feel calm. You do it again, you feel a little less anxious, calm you down. Do it again, feel less anxious, until it gets to the point where you do something which absolutely used to petrify you, and now there's no emotional outburst. You simply just get on with life because it's been normalized. And that's the important message from this, is that you can change. You're not stuck with these conditions. I overcame them myself. There's nothing special about me. I'm just someone who learned how my body worked and how my mind worked, and then decided to update it and make it a more positive experience, and gently built courage so that I was okay with my emotions, and that with practice and repetition you get a new baseline. Every time you're a bit more courageous, things get easier and easier, and eventually you can end up in a place where anxiety was just a distant memory. You can look back and just be shocked at how much you've changed. So there is nothing broken within you that needs to be fixed. All it needs is practice, willingness, and persistence. Those three things will completely change your life. If you decide that you are going to push forward, you're not going to let anxiety stop you living. You're going to get on with life no matter how you feel. Your life will change very quickly, and you will feel a lot better about yourself, and anxiety will lose all of its power. So, with that positive message, thank you for watching.